Hi, welcome back to Biker Protocol. I am Picasso. I'm here with Hollywood today, and we have a very special guest. It is our good friend and our attorney, actually, Damon Scheutze. He's here today to talk about different legal aspects of what it's like to be riding motorcycles and different questions that a lot of times come up that you might want to have asked by an attorney. Well, we're here, and we're very fortunate we have somebody who is one of the, if not the best personal injury attorneys here in Las Vegas with his law firm Legal Rights. So welcome, Damon. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So cool. So we have questions for you today, and
Okay.
we've gotten some already on the channel, and so we thought what a great opportunity it would be to actually interview an attorney. But tell us a little bit about yourself, like what got you into law, what how'd you start working with because you primarily just work with motorcyclists, right?
Now at this point I do, yes.
Okay.
So I started representing big corporations and insurance companies, and I did that for about 20 years, and had a gigantic trial against a very famous national trial attorney. I was defending Taco Bell, and I surprisingly won the trial, and against all odds, 5-month process, and they invited me to come do a trial with them after that, and one of them said that I was wasting my time representing companies, and I was sort of on the fence about continuing to work at all. I was sort of ready to retire, and then I race motorcycles, so I was at a track in California, and I saw a motorhome that said Biker 911 on it, motorcycle attorneys. And I spent a couple of years trying to meet that guy, and he's become a good friend of mine in California. And he was sort of an inspiration for me to do something similar here. And I've just had nothing but fun since the last 13 years doing that.
Yeah, I don't know if you said, did you grow up here in Vegas? Or?
I did grow up here, yeah, riding dirt bikes and doing dumb things.
Same here. So
Okay.
yeah, Vegas native here too. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of neat. So, so now that you primarily just work with motorcyclists, right?
Yes.
How many people a year do you usually defend? It's pretty much just dealing with kind of accidents and
criminal law.
Right.
So I'm not the partner that handles the criminal cases primarily. I do a few here and there that are maybe more interest to me, or they have maybe a more technical aspect of motorcycling involved. I'll do those. So my partner that does the criminal law is Jenny, which you guys know her, of course. And I work on personal injury and marketing the firm. So we do about 300 motorcycle cases a year.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about half of the cases in the state.
Really?
Yeah, and then she does the criminal work, what comes in, and what makes sense for us to do. Yeah.
Not to go past our plan here, do you find that a lot of the motorcycle cases become criminal cases?
Well, while you guys were setting up, a criminal case became an accident case.
Okay,
So.
all right. So it can go either way. Yeah,
Yeah, but sometimes for instance, a DUI case, and the guy got caught because he got hit on his bike. It's not his fault, so there's a DUI aspect that Jenny can handle, and the rest of the firm will handle the personal injury portion of the case. So, in answer to your question,
Yeah, all right.
it happens.
So one of the things that I know about you, and because we've ridden together, I've known you for a very long time, is I've always found it odd because there are other law offices that specialize in talking or dealing with bikers, with motorcyclists, and it always fascinates me when the attorneys don't actually ride bikes. I always thought that was such a weird thing, because motorcycles are such a difference in how accidents can play out as opposed to cars, right? I mean, so isn't that kind of your case? I mean, because you ride. Tell us about what you've had I know you ride a variety of different bikes, but I mean, do you think that gives you an advantage doing what you do?
Yes, 100%. And I'll start with this example. There are accident reconstruction experts. Some of them that I have dealt with around the country don't even have a motorcycle model in their software. A lot of the softwares don't have the ability to factor a motorcycle, so they'll use a light car. But a car doesn't steer like a motorcycle.
Yeah.
They don't decelerate, they don't accelerate, they don't do a lot of things. So I learned these differences when I was looking at these reconstructions that didn't make sense in my head because I know what the bike can do. So after dealing with some of these guys over the years, we do get asked to help a lot of the motorcycle firms deal with the motorcycle aspects of their cases because it's highly technical and it's quite different. So as a racer and a riding coach and a longtime rider, things make sense to me differently than maybe somebody who's never been on a bike or who isn't very familiar with a bike. And I know when an expert, I know very quickly if they have actual knowledge of how a bike works. So yeah, it gives me a definite advantage.
Interesting.
And I had a case that settled in trial for a little under $9 million. Metro had their lead fatal investigator investigate the accident, and he came up with this wild conclusion, which I went out the day after the accident, saw this skid mark, and I knew when I looked at it, it didn't belong. And so for years, we litigated that issue. And in trial, he said, I don't think it belongs. I don't think it belongs. Well, why did you do it? He said, if I didn't do that, I would have had nothing to work with. And he flipped his opinion in front of the jury and said, I think it was the other person's fault.
Wow.
And we went outside and started talking about settlement for the first time.
Wow.
So yeah, it gives me an advantage.
Yeah.
So if you're ever involved in an accident in any way, or any situation legally, if let's say you're pulled over by police, let's say you're in an accident, somebody hits you, you hit somebody, at what point do you feel like you should be getting an attorney involved in that conversation? Because I know, I can speak from experience, cops a lot of times use a lot of legal wrangling, right, to kind of get you to say things, against your will or that will self-incriminate you or things like that. And they're very good at it, right? I mean, I assume they're trained for that. So, at what point do you start to, say I need to get an attorney involved?
I mean, at the scene of an accident,
Yeah.
I mean, you should just give your, what I say, name, rank, and serial number type stuff and a concise explanation of what happened. I got rear-ended and I hurt. That would be sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you need a lawyer at the scene, although I get called to a lot of scenes, and I'm happy to go. But some police are amenable to that. They will accommodate it. Some are hostile towards it. So I don't know that it's the greatest look when some defense lawyer says, "Wasn't your lawyer sitting in the ambulance with you talking to you?"
Yeah.
Like, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
But so at what point? I think immediately after it's done, call or call there. But answer the questions and go to the hospital.
So if, like say a cop pulls you over and they start asking, they always use a lot of entrapment questions I've experienced, like, do you know how fast you were going? Right, it's a common one. So what would be a good answer for that? I mean,
here's my license.
yeah, okay.
I was going to say I don't answer questions outside the scope of the stop. On the note of calling the lawyer, so I had an incident. This was like years ago. Got pulled over. It was actually after the first anniversary ride of Ver.
I heard about that.
Oh, you did? And
No, not your stop. The ride.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I got pulled over, and because I had a tinted license plate, but there was obvious other reasons why they followed me, and pulled me over, and I was concealed carrying, and so I gave it to them, told them, gave them my card, whatever. They took the gun, whatever, put it in a safe spot, and then they couldn't find it in the system, and they kept saying, "I'm not finding you in the system. I'm not finding the system." And at this point, I'm just sitting on the curb, helmet's still on, boiling hot in the summer. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. You got the card, because it was a Washoe County one. It was like years ago, not too long. But and then eventually he comes up to me and he goes, "Stand up." He puts me in cuffs. He goes, "You're being arrested for illegal conceal." I'm like, okay, that's funny. You have the card, right? And so my question to him was like, when can I call my lawyer, right? So in a case like that, when do you call the lawyer? I would have to be taken back to the station and then deal with all that.
A lawyer's not going to help at that moment.
Yeah.
It's only I think not everybody's going to agree with me here, but I think it's just going to agitate the situation.
Okay.
I mean, I've gone sometimes and been able to have a conversation. Sometimes the cop will talk to me on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they won't. But definitely after you're processed and get out, that we can sit down and have a conversation.
Okay. And then funny story to end that is they found me in the system. Oh, here you go.
Funny how that works, right?
Take the cuffs off, and then they put my gun down and my knife, like, without out of reach, and they said, "Don't go reaching for it, or it'll be an active threat." And then they proceeded to sit in their car for another like 10, 15 minutes, and I'm just sitting on my bike. And then they turned around, sat on the other side of the road, sat there. They're asking if I ride with sport bikes and if I do wheelies on my cruiser. And all I said was, I don't answer questions.
1,000-pound motorcycle, I do it all the time, yeah.
So, anyways, just was kind of curious about it, because that was kind of the first time I had experienced some of that, where I'm like, oh, I might have to. But yeah, so I learned that a long time ago. I don't know if it was from you or a seminar or something. You just don't answer the
Shut your
question
mouth,
unless
yeah.
it's about me speeding or whatever I'm pulled over for. Just don't say
give me
be
your ID.
respectful, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't get engaged and try to fight them or be a jerk or whatever, because I've seen people do that, and that never goes over well,
No,
right?
it's not going to go well.
No, it's not going to go well. So you just be nice, polite, and but
That concealed carry is that's a frequent issue that we deal with now. And so the law actually says that it can't be readily discerned, right? So we've had club members where you can see the entire gun and the T-shirt's over maybe the back strap of the gun, and then they get the felony
For concealed carry?
concealed carry.
Really?
So if they don't have a CCW, then they get
Yeah,
on it.
but the cop knows that's why they pull them over. That's
Yeah.
not what they're going to say, but they can see the gun. So anyway, you got to be really careful about that.
Do you find, like, because that's a good, some good knowledge. Do you find that you can get out of that because of that? Like, it's half
No,
covered?
you're gonna sacrifice the gun and pay a fine.
That's what.
But
Okay,
you're not.
so,
You probably won't take the felony
Okay,
in a
yeah.
negotiation.
all right, I see.
Yeah, but you're gonna lose the gun.
Yeah.
Really? So they're confiscated?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. I guess that makes sense, right?
Keeping the world safe from
People like us. Us
you
hoodlums.
people.
Right. Interesting. Well, so if you're pulled over, so like I know you just said, basically you ever get pulled over by police, just name, rank, serial number, right? Have your ID, have your insurance, all that stuff ready. What are your thoughts on, have you been experiencing, I can speak from personal experience in Las Vegas, some of the police, and I'm not saying all of them are bad, right? But, we've seen them do some rather odd things here in town. We've been to parties where they post people across the street with cameras, and they take pictures of huge lenses. They take pictures of every bike coming and going. I've seen them do things where they walk sidewalks and write down all this. And I think it's mostly just intimidation. I mean, is that kind of what your experience is, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pulled out of those parties to answer for my lack of a license plate.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But we had like one of my guys in our club. We got pulled over. And they love doing this in the summer, right? It's like their favorite time of year to do this when we're here in Las Vegas, and it's literally like today it's going to be about 111 out. And what they've done is I've seen them do this where they'll wait till somebody pulls out and they just pull them over for no reason, and they let them sit in the sun for 40. Can I see your license, registration? And they go back and they sit in the air-conditioned car for half an hour, 45 minutes, and while you're sitting cooking on the bike. And they tell you not to get off the bike. They tell you to leave your hand on the hand. So you're sitting literally baking in the sun. And then they come back and say, okay, you're good to go. And they just let you go. And they don't even say anything like speeding. We didn't see you run a stop sign or nothing. Just, you're free to go now. Good, have a nice day. So, it's unfortunate that they do those things. But I mean, have you been seeing kind of a pattern of that, or do you not see them?
I have seen, on the different sets.
Yeah.
Some sets are treated different than others. I've seen that. And usually after something has happened, they ramp up their participation in our events.
Yeah.
So, or if they hear something might be happening, then they come out in big numbers and harass people.
Yeah.
And there's certain clubs, you just know if you go, you're going to get pulled over
It's
when
true,
you
yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
So you just got to be aware of those things.
Sure.
Well, what are your rights if you get pulled over? So, obviously if they read you your rights, your Miranda rights, right? That's
Well, then you should just shut the
Just
fuck
shut
up.
up, right?
Yeah, at
Is
that point.
that should be just the policy. As soon as you read your rights, just don't say a word, right?
Correct.
Okay. But leading up to that, what are generally your rights?
I wouldn't generally say anything anyway. Like that's the right. You know why I pulled you over? No, here's my license.
Yeah. Because if you say like, oh, I was only doing 5 over or something,
Right.
then you're incriminating yourself. And
So I'll just give you an example. I had one time. It was me. And I took my race bike out, and I shouldn't have ridden on the street, but I did. Whatever. I was testing it before I was going someplace. I was going out to the track the next day or something, and I was coming down the hill from Kyle Canyon maybe going 135 or 140.
Oh.
And I came over a little crest, and there's a highway patrolman sitting there writing a ticket, and he turned and started running towards his car, and I'm like, pardon the French, I'm f***ed, right?
We'll
And
beat
you
that.
can't really run off of that hill.
Yeah.
Not that I would ever run. And so I pulled over, and he pulled in, 30 seconds later. Do you know why I pulled you over? And I said, no. He said, how fast are you going? I said, 55. And we did that back and forth for several minutes. He said, do you have your license, insurance, registration? I said, nope. I'm out test riding my bike. And I live fairly close to here, and I don't have any of my stuff. In fact, the bike wasn't insured because it was my race bike. And we did that for several minutes, and he said, you got to give me something. He goes, because at first he said, when you came over that hill, you're going 135. And in my head, I'm like, you're pretty damn accurate. But I didn't say that. I said, I was going 55. I said it probably sounded fast because I was in a low gear trying to get the feel for the bike. And he said, you got to give me something. And I said, 60. He goes, all right, we'll do that. 5 over. He wrote me a ticket for 5 over.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
I could have just kept saying 55 and he wouldn't have had nothing probably. He said, by the time I got back to my car and got the gun on you, you're going 87. But anyway, after the ticket was all done, and he said, all right, ticket's done, camera's off, everything, this is just you and me. And I said, okay. He goes, you don't recognize me? And I said, no. He goes, I do track days with you. You're not getting a feel for nothing.
Okay.
And then we had
funny.
a whole conversation about the
that's
tires that were on the bike. He was
Okay.
interested in my Pirellis.
I'll see you at the track tomorrow.
Basically,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
great.
So and he turns out he's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's a guy that helps us out quite a bit with info and help. Some of these guys are helpful. Some of them are the opposite.
I think
Like I said, I'm not saying all police are bad, because they're not, right? But it's a crapshoot depending on what day you catch these guys on all that time.
I think it's the same thing with like motorcycle clubs. Everyone thinks they're gangs because of the few
Right.
that might be gangs or bad or whatever.
Yeah.
Same with cops. They're
it's all true.
they're
People believe the stereotype they want to believe. So,
Sure.
but yeah, that's interesting. So and I've had police tell me a lot of times that and the reason they ask you questions like that is basically to see what you're going to say. So if a cop says, how fast are you going? You could say, well, I was going 5 over. Well, now they have you for speeding. If you say, I don't know, then they're going to say, well, if you didn't know, why didn't you know? You should know because you're, So no matter what you say, you're going to be in the
That's
wrong.
why
right?
I
So
said
that's
55.
You're right.
55. 55.
Right on the speed limit. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I had somebody tell me once to say that I was just following the flow of traffic, but I don't know that's a good idea either. So yeah, it's like
Say nothing
say
or
nothing.
or lie. I'm joking. Don't lie.
You're not allowed to lie, right?
Right.
So there's
That's
a my,
actually-
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can lie. You can't.
Yeah.
Right.
But my mentor in the law, who since passed away, said, if you got the facts, argue the facts. If you don't have the facts, argue the law. If you don't have the law, lie.
Okay.
Anyway,
Take that to, okay, that's an interesting quote. That's cool.
Going back about the ID, so if you're pulled over, you have to show your ID or you don't.
if you're
'Cause I've been
pulled, if
told-
you're in a vehicle, if
Yeah.
you're operating the vehicle, you are required to present your driver's license.
Okay.
If you're a passenger or you're a pedestrian, you are not required to show an ID.
Okay.
But you're going to get in this. You're going to get in this discussion. Why won't you give me your ID?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not required to. And then you're having a debate.
Yeah.
So not everybody agrees with me. I say just show your ID
Yeah.
anyway, right? Some guys will argue that and say I'm not required to and I'm not gonna. And then they're going to find the concealed gun or
Yeah.
or some reason to fuck
Right.
with you.
Tire pressure's too low, or can we get anything? I
blinkers
know
up.
they've done things like that. So yeah,
I could give you examples. So
interesting.
So my advice, again, not everybody agrees with me. Just give them your ID. If you're walking down the street, just give them your ID.
Yeah, because sooner or later, if you start fighting, they're just going to take you to jail, and then they'll figure it out there. So
That's not the fight. That's not the
Right.
battle to have, because you still got to tell them your name, right?
Yeah.
And if your name's a common name, you have to give them some other piece of data that they can figure out who you are. So why not just hand them the ID and avoid all of that?
yeah.
All of that.
So
True.
you mentioned concealed. You're carrying a firearm, right? So every state has different laws. So it's there's no one clear answer to this because we're here in Nevada. Our neighbor California, their gun laws are radically different than ours,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so But like but in Nevada, let's say if you're in a state where you can open carry, if you're in a state where you can legally conceal carry, and you are carrying a firearm legally, what should you do if you do get pulled over? What should be the protocol on that?
I mean, the cop's generally going to ask you if you have any weapons, so just tell them the honest answer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are concealed carrying, is it a law you have to tell them that you're carrying, or?
Because
no?
I don't know the answer to that.
Actually, I think I remember from my concealed carry class, is if you are, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments on the video,
Yeah.
but I believe that what I remember is that if you are carrying concealed and they ask you about it, you have to declare that. That's part of the agreement that you have to get your concealed carry.
Oh, okay. I don't know the answer specifically to that
Okay.
question, but if you have a weapon and they ask you, my suggestion would be just be
Just
honest
tell
about
them.
it.
I mean, it makes sense.
Because that's an extra charge if you get arrested.
Right,
Yeah.
because if you have a problem, that can turn into a felony, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that's definitely something you don't want. So, okay. So if you're being detained by the police, what do you, are saddlebags like allowed to be searched? Is that something that can be done?
So that's the one I had to do some
Right.
reading.
We talked about this before the interview, so yeah.
So they can, with your permission, of course, they can look in it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a warrant, and we just had that issue recently, following a party, I think you guys were there,
Yeah.
and they got the warrant. They can obviously look. If your bike's being impounded, they can do an inventory. And the other situation is just a check for officer safety if it's within reach. So, so what I talked with another attorney last night about this specific issue and he said what he has seen is that the officer will ask you to stand by your bike, and now it's within reach.
Interesting.
So he said he has seen that as a pretext to look in saddlebags.
Ah,
And that's just for officer safety to make sure there's nothing dangerous within your reach. So the question then is what if it's locked?
Yeah.
So, but they don't know if it's locked or not, right? You can't tell looking at your Harley saddlebag if it's locked.
right. There's no way.
So the short answer is no, not without a warrant or your permission. But there are some exceptions to that.
So they could pull that out of their hat if they really wanted to screw with you. It'd be like,
Yes.
oh, it's a safety thing. We gotta check it out.
So if a cop says, "Can I look in your saddlebag?" should you say yes or no?
Well,
They ask you, right?
I mean, that's
My concern is if you say no, then they're just going to be, well, what are you trying to hide?
Yeah.
If you say yes and they find something, then,
I have seen that play out many times. I've never seen them use that as a basis to get a warrant.
Okay.
Can I look in your bag? No. Why not? Don't want you to look in my bag.
Okay.
It's that simple. I've had that issue before. Like, what are you doing with A, B, and C? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. You pulled me. What'd you pull me over for?
For speeding, and then that's why you're looking at my saddlebags.
So
That makes sense. Have you discovered that clubs are more likely, certain types of clubs, let's say, are more likely to get profiled than others? Like is a motorcycle club more likely to get profiled than a riding club, or like an independent rider even? So
I have not seen a difference in the eyes of the. I think the police appreciate the differences, but they know that most other people don't. So
Yeah.
I have seen judges call all of those things gangs.
right.
And a jury, most jurors I have found don't ride motorcycles, and most jurors have never met anybody in a motorcycle club that they know of.
Right.
Although I got an interesting story about that real quick. But in their eyes, every motorcycle club member is a dangerous outlaw motorcycle gang member.
Right.
But I was at a dinner with some people, actually some executives from Ducati North America and some of my local friends here that are not involved with clubs at all. And they started talking about a outlaw motorcycle gang that we all know very well. And that's what the police call it. And I said, you can't tell by looking at a person if they're in that club or any club.
Right.
And he goes, oh, my friend said, sure you can. And I said, how could you tell? And he was telling me things. And I said, there happened to be a member of that club sitting at a table a couple tables away having his anniversary dinner with his girl. And I said, that girl you've been checking out all night, what do you think of her husband? And he's like, she's like a regular guy. I said, he happens to be in this club we're talking about. No, he's not. And I said, come with me. And I went over and said, hey, good to see you guys. You want me to take your picture? Took a picture, introduced them, and he was like, oh my God. I said, you might even work with somebody, you don't know, right? As there was another club member that was an orthopedic surgeon at UMC. And one time I was with the cops and him, and I said, this is a guy that might put your foot back on someday if you crash your bike. Maybe be nice to him.
Well, people don't realize, even in outlaw clubs, I know people that have regular, that work in real estate, that work selling motorcycles, like all kinds of things.
Insurance.
Right?
Yeah.
Insurance,
Yeah.
right. So, well, and we get it too. We've even had people on our channel even say, call us gangs, right, on our channel, which is kind of funny in the comments, right? But like Hollywood and I, we both work in media, right?
Yeah.
So we both work in video production, photography. That's our backgrounds, right? But in both of our clubs, we know people that are welders. We know people that are real estate agents.
Everything.
We know
Yeah,
every
yeah.
walk of life you can
Teachers,
think of.
contractors,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
firemen.
every walk of life you can think of, and it's just so funny that, and to where we hear the gang comment, right? But do you find that certain types of clubs get profiled by cops differently, or do they just not care? Or
To interject real quick, also including like motorcycle ministries.
Oh,
Do
yeah,
those
right,
fall in that same category of the profiling?
So
Fine.
the pastor that rides with us
Yeah.
on VER, he got pulled over and cited for no light on his license plate. And I told them motorcycles don't have to have a light on. Basically, shut up, you need to back up 20 feet or whatever.
Really?
And then there were some discussions, backdoor discussions, and a lieutenant said, I asked the city attorney or whoever, district attorney, and he did the research. Turns out you're right. So we didn't submit the ticket, and we did a memo to our motor guys. And I said, but really, you had 6 officers surround him.
He's a pastor.
He had his gun, like you said, a safe distance away. And I was forcefully told I can't even be close enough to listen.
Really?
And for a license plate light. So in answer to your question, I thought it was because he had split traffic with me about 2 miles earlier. We were late to where we were going, and we were, well, I wasn't. It was all him. But he split traffic, and I was following him to make sure he was safe. I thought that's why he got pulled over.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But it was the light.
Really?
That was it.
So in Nevada, right, we're legally not allowed to technically lane split. California can. They get to. Are there any other states that they can lane split or filter?
Arizona now, and
Arizona,
I think there's a
that's
third
right, yeah.
state that just happened.
Arizona, is that recent or?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
real
it's
recent,
recent,
right?
and it's already a problem.
Oh, right.
So I know the person who helped push that through the legislature, and I don't know, within a month of that, he was on some of the forums saying, you guys are fucking this up. It's going to go away. It hasn't, but...
Because my time in Arizona, I've always felt like at least the people in cars were always pretty, they seem to be very used to motorcycles. I've never had issues riding there. They were always good
They'll
in
move out the
traffic.
way when
Yeah.
you're
In
splitting.
California is like that too.
Yeah, here they'll move in the way.
Yeah.
because they get all mad that you're doing it.
So that's unfortunate that they could. So they're gonna start screwing it up and possibly lose that. Then.
Yeah, it's the normal push pull.
Yeah.
So he's an older cruiser rider, and then the younger sport bike guys are wheeling through the cars, and it's the old guys saying you're f***ing it up for us, and and the truth is it's probably everybody, because I think in there it's a filtering thing, and you have to be traffic has to be stopped, and you can't go more than a certain speed.
So it's not actually lane splitting; it's filtering.
Same in California. There's a differential, and I think it's either 15 or 30 miles an hour. I forget which it is, and the traffic has to be going under a certain speed. But I've been there. The first time I did it, I thought I was being cautious, going like 60 through traffic that was at 30, and some guys went past me, probably going 90
Jeez.
in another lane. So I jumped behind them and followed them, and I'm like, oh, this is how you do it. So I did it with Big Daddy one night, and I learned that as Harley, these gigantic baggers are pretty good at splitting traffic.
I'm always nervous because mine's
my
so
bike's so
wide.
It's
big
not
that
as
it's like
wide
a-
as you think, though.
Really?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Well, But again, here in Vegas, well, you're not supposed to, but just driving here is like the Thunderdome every day, it seems like.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, Big Daddy was one of our friends. He recently passed away. Great pastor, pastor from a ministry club. So yeah, great guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to clarify for those who are not aware, because some people use the words interchangeably, lane splitting is when you're doing it at speed. Filtering is when cars are basically
Like up
stopped,
at the
right?
light
Yeah.
or something.
Right, when you're trying to get to the front. I remember when I was in Taiwan, I spent some time doing business over there, and I thought it was so interesting because there's so many scooters there. And literally millions on this little island, right? And the traffic all knows everybody filters to get to the front. So what they do is where the line is at the traffic lights in the cities, like in Taipei, the cars will actually stay back 2 or 3 car lengths, because when they come to a light, all the scooters, and there might be 40 or 50 of them, might filter up to the front there, and then they just sit there. And then when the light changes, it's like, like the Indy 500.
It's like
It's
ants.
crazy, yeah.
Oh,
It's
that's
pretty
pretty
wild.
cool.
But the drivers know. It's just like, there's so many people that ride scooters that they just leave room for them in the lights. It's pretty wild, but yeah.
All right,
That's
so
filtering.
we're kind of talking about motorcycle clubs, ministries, all that. I've always been curious. Actually, we'll take a step back because we were talking about cops pushing up on clubs and just trying to get their way. Clubs doing events. How we all hear about clubs getting shut down, or not clubs getting shut down, but events getting shut down because the police are going to the venues, pushing up on them. So I don't know. Can you talk on that? Any advice on that?
I mean, realistically, a lot of the functions they're not legal.
They're not legal?
They're not.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's two sides of this coin,
Yeah.
but there's club houses with bars. Those are not legal.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what are the normal workarounds? Well, it's donation only. It's not legal.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're getting paid. And so, but as you guys know, the cops overlook that stuff for years. There's clubhouses that have been around for years or were.
Well, every Elks Lodge that has a poker night and they serve alcohol, how is that any different?
Well,
than
they
most
may
of-
have a liquor license. I
They
don't
might,
know.
but whatever
But
they
what
do.
we're seeing now, like Eagles Lodge, is their liquor license being threatened if they host motorcycles,
Oh, no kidding.
motorcycle events.
So how can they go about doing
Well,
that?
they can't. So I had a recent meeting with some car clubs that we work with some county, not the actual county commissioners, they're representatives, like the guy you got to talk to before you talk to the guy. And he said, I haven't heard anything at all like that. And I said, no, they're walking in, and sometimes with a letter, and saying that this is what we're going to do to you if you allow this dangerous gang to have a party here. So again, we can't say the name of the club, but think of one of the dominant clubs here, had a booked event at a convention center hotel. They had over 500 members that had reserved rooms. They had prepaid a deposit, and ironically enough, the theme of the convention was constitutional rights. And
Wow.
the event was going to be Thursday through Sunday. They were pretty clear with their members, soft colors only, no problems, right? And the national organization signed the contract, right? The local organization used the credit card and paid a big fat deposit. So on Wednesday, when like the nationals came in and other people started filtering in, the hotel said, oh, we're canceling this event. It turned out the police had showed up with a big packet of information about this club and threatening the hotel and all that. And I was trying to salvage it. What I told the police was, you want 500, you think these guys are dangerous? 500 of them on one spot with their nationals working them? You want 500 of them spread around town?
Yeah, right.
And they're gonna not have nothing to do now. They're gonna be drinking and doing, and sure enough, there were some problems that weekend. The best one being somebody slapped a girl's butt on the way into a hotel. The girl was walking out. Her husband was an off-duty cop, and they squared up and
yeah.
fought there in the foyer of the hotel.
Can't even imagine that.
But anyway,
Interesting.
I mean, you guys have 1,000 stories
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
it's-
But so they can just go in and, I mean, do they
No.
have warrant behind it? Like,
No, it's the hotel.
it's just a scare tactic.
So if you put yourself in outside of the motorcycle community, right? I'm a business owner. I have a very valuable license and liquor license or gaming license that I work very hard to get, and it makes me a lot of money, right? And I want the police to protect my property. I don't ride motorcycles. I just want to make money. And I got a cop here telling me,
Yeah, right.
oh my God, all these things are going to happen. Sorry, guys, I got to protect my license. I've had landlords, I've directly told them they can't do anything to you. The police can't do anything to you. I don't care, man. This is my livelihood. This is my property. These guys have been nothing but good to me, but they've got to get out.
So it's scaring them into thinking something can happen.
Most people have never ridden a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So, and most people love the police. You've seen the comments on the police posts, like, great job. You know, you arrested 4 soccer moms today.
Oh, I know. I see it on. Yeah, it makes me crazy.
Man.
I somehow, I don't think I tried to start getting the feeds of our local police department on Facebook.
Yeah.
And it was exactly like what you're describing. It was like, oh, congratulations, you pulled somebody over and gave them a ticket for, and I'm like, really? Really? Like, it's just shocking that, they sit there and pat themselves on the back for such simple things.
Most people are really enthusiastic about what the police do.
Yeah.
And not everything they do is bad. But,
yeah, of course, right.
But, so when a normal person has the police come in, they're going to, oh my God, I'm going to do what they say.
Yeah, it's scary. Sure, of course. Well, I mean, from the legal point of view, as a club, and this is how we are, I don't know if it's how you guys are, we're incorporated. So, we're set up as a nonprofit, basically, not a 501c3, but I can't remember which status we are, but we're incorporated for asset protection, but also so that we can get a checking account. Makes it a little easier for things like dues and whatnot, right? Do you suggest most clubs incorporate? Is that something that's a good idea, bad idea? I've heard both sides to it. I mean, we have this with
the bad side is, a RICO sort of issue.
Right.
Or this is one more box to be checked that this is some sort of enterprise. And so I've seen some of the more dominant clubs have different management structures depending on, as far as I can tell, who's been prosecuted for RICO and who hasn't. So some are very decentralized, some are centralized. So in answer to your question, one of the advantages I've seen of this was a case where some 5 or 6 club members ran from the police for a long time. And part of the issue was, part of the settlement was that they wanted forfeiture on the bikes. And most of the guys were okay with it. But interestingly, one of the bikes wasn't owned by the guy who was riding it, and they couldn't forfeit the bike, right? Because it wasn't his to forfeit. And so after that, I had advised some clubs either have a corporation that owns the motorcycles, or I'll ride your bike, you ride my bike. Like, you're my best friend, right? So my bike's gonna be titled in your name. It's my bike, and I got your title, right? So we can't ever do anything to each other. And if anything ever happens, you can just go get your bike out of impound.
Interesting.
So I've advised that to some of these clubs, and a lot of guys have done that. I set up a couple of corporations. One of them set up a corporation out of state where all their motorcycles are titled through this corporation.
Okay.
So that ends the issue.
Interesting. Yeah. Have you seen like an increase of civil asset forfeiture on? I know there's a lot of states getting pushback on that.
I haven't seen it. There was a nasty case up north that I think they've toned it down since then, where literally a cop pulled over a guy in a motorhome. He had a bunch of cash. He said he was going to a farm auction or something.
Yeah, right, to buy a truck, if I remember right.
Yeah, or tractor, whatever,
yeah,
something.
Yeah, tractor or something.
And the first cop identified that the guy had money. So he radios ahead and says, this guy's coming through. And it's a drug corridor up there in northern Nevada anyway, but he's coming through with money. So the second cop had a dog and sniffed and found it, and they confiscated it. And that ended poorly for the police. Years later, the guy got his money back in a big fat judgment. But I haven't seen on the ground here a lot of that. I haven't seen any for a few years.
Okay.
So
maybe they're starting to tone down on that a little bit.
I mean, if you take them on a 20-mile chase and
that's different,
unfortunately
right?
you get caught, I tell people that's going to be part of the deal.
Yeah.
That bike's gone.
So going back to the events and stuff, any advice on what to do to kind of hopefully smooth it over, make it so you don't get shut down by the police, if that's a possibility?
So yeah, I have
contracts, something like that.
Well, I have some thoughts because I deal with this every weekend.
Yeah.
So, of course, you want to publish the event to get people there, but you have everybody's phone number in your particular set, right? Yeah. Just call the presidents, right, and tell them. They can disseminate to their members. And I think a personal invite is more likely to get attendance anyway. But so I would say quit putting all the details online, right? Yeah. And I get that it's a revenue source for some of these clubs, but you're asking for it if you don't have a license to do what you're doing. So I think setting up at a place like the Eagles Lounge or the Eagles a place that's bike friendly and is going to push back on the
Yeah,
police.
we're referring to, there's a local place here in Vegas. It's like an Elks. It's a, what is it? It's a VFW?
Fraternity? You talking about the Eagles?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a fraternity, right?
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
but it's a-
like a Elks.
Yeah. But
But
do it have
the
it
commander
in place.
there is willing to push back on the police.
Yeah.
Like, I've got my license, everything's legal. And so one of those recent events, they, I don't know if you, did you get pulled over? One of you guys, they were pulling almost everybody over that was leaving.
Yeah, one of my guys did, yeah.
Yeah, and they got.
Actually, it was when he was coming in, they got him. Yeah.
So,
There was a
so
party
my
that was-
suggestion is, just bite the bullet, right? Have the contract,
Yeah.
make a deal where maybe the location gets to keep the alcohol and you get a charge for your admission or whatever.
Do you need a permit to do an event?
Some events,
I've heard-
Depends on the
Yeah.
city, right? And what the
Well,
city was.
I have to read those statutes every time I'm asked that to see if that event complies. So like over at Post 8, the commander there is extremely careful and gets a permit for every event, although I don't think many of those events require a permit.
Okay.
That's another VFW here in Vegas, yeah.
Yeah, so like the events that we frequent at the Eagles Lodge, I don't think those require a permit because everything's there on site. It's it's enclosed. It's
It's like
off.
having
So
it in your
we-
backyard, right? Essentially. Is that
Yeah.
kind of the
So we
idea?
had to get a permit. We did a poker run once where we had everybody end off at a bar out in Henderson, Nevada, which is right outside of Vegas. And because of the location we were at, we had to get a permit because the city of Henderson demanded it. So it wasn't really expensive, but it was a lot of paperwork, and it wasn't. And then they actually had to come down because we were serving food. They had to come down and do an inspection of our food service area because the bar that we had it at doesn't serve food, so they didn't have a health
Okay.
right. So these are all things we learned after the fact, and it was like, well, we're kind of locked and loaded into this location, so we had to get, and there was all these things we had to qualify for. We had to have a wash station for your hands because we're barbecuing outside. So it sounds really simple, but it turned into something very complicated. So you have to talk to your local jurisdictions because every city is going to have different rules. And even in Southern Nevada here, you can have something in North Las Vegas be different than Las Vegas, and Las Vegas different than Clark County, something different in Clark County than in Henderson. They all are going to have different rules.
Well,
It's
we've
weird,
had-
but yeah.
And this is more so on the black set. I've seen this where the cops will show up at somebody's house.
Really?
Like, hey, see, you're having an event. Do you have a permit? Well, we don't need a permit. So, yes, you do. But it's 3 days before. You're not getting a permit.
Yeah.
So we had that incident with, happened to be a club down there that used to be off of Spring Mountain. So, and they have a lawyer in their club. So I was working with him, but they were pulling that permit routine. And I said, we ultimately decided they're wrong. We don't need a permit for this event. And the police said, if you do it, we're going to arrest people and shut it down. And we did it, and they never came on property.
Because it's a scare tactic again,
It was
right?
a scare tactic.
Right. But
And that gave me
yeah.
some confidence moving forward that
Yeah.
they, not saying that they won't someday do it, but like you said, they just sit across the street and take pictures.
Yeah.
Or they'll post a car up at each end of the street.
Yeah.
We personally have been to events where they send a helicopter up overhead.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's always interesting. Yeah.
Pizza party
Wave at them. Yeah,
night.
it's kind of
We
fun.
came out and there was a helicopter.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys are welcome to some pizza.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, my big joke was the last party we went out where they were taking pictures across the street. I was like, oh, I should have done this. Should have driven down the street. Said there was a 7-Eleven up the street. I was going to buy a box of donuts and bring it to them. I was like,
Didn't you
that
take a
close.
photo of them? Like,
I have a
sitting
picture of them.
on
Yeah, I'll
a
post it in the
tripod
video.
with
Yeah, I
lens
have a
this
picture
big
of
on
them.
it?
They got masks on. Yes, you won't ID them, right? Big police, and they got their camera. I'll post it on the video. Yeah,
So-
but it's crazy, right?
Yeah, so this is all good because we just released a 2-part series on hosting a poker run. So like learning on like how to start it and all the organization and
Okay.
everything. One thing I've been told is you can't, if you're doing it for charity, you cannot collect anything. It can't
Yeah.
be part of the proceeds go to charity. It has to be all of it goes to charity.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
read
something-
those statutes, and these raffles and all that
Yeah.
they violate the gaming laws
Yeah.
here in Nevada.
Really?
Yeah, but people do it, and I haven't seen anyone get in trouble for it. But the way I've read the statutes, those things are not legal.
But so that's just another thing in their hat again, where they could come out if they wanted to really hassle you, and say, "Well, you're doing this illegally," and then whatever, go
So,
from there.
and here's another story. This is on the black set one night, and there was this particular club has a wrecking crew, a chapter that's well known nationally for that, and they were there that night. Police car pulls up, and they were a little more direct. The police said something, and one of them said, "We got more guns and more guys than you. Why don't you leave?"
Wow.
Really?
The cops
That's
like,
pretty-
"Have a great night,"
Yep,
and they
see you
left.
later.
So, and other people are very receptive and start talking, and it gets nervous. I've seen clubs voluntarily shut down their events in the middle of the event,
Oh man.
and there's just one police car out there messing with them, and I'm telling them, "Don't do it."
Yeah.
So we had a party, we had a pig roast that we did a couple years ago, right? And that year, Metro was putting it out there a lot, and I guess they shut down one party already earlier in that year for anybody that was walking outside the property with any kind of alcohol. If you
Oh,
walked
yeah.
outside with a beer bottle and you walked down to the driveway of wherever this was being held at, or anywhere outside the insides of the facility with any kind of alcohol, they were snatching you up. And so then they'd just come in and do a raid, right? So what we did was, one of the guys in my club he was a manager of a trucking company. So we got pipe and drape, and we actually pipe and drape the entire front of our property.
yeah.
So that way we can go outside, grab a beer, and nobody can see it.
We've
Right?
seen
And it's
plenty of those
crazy,
where
but it's
they
ridiculous has to
block
come to
the,
that. Yeah.
they use
There-
vehicles. And
Yeah,
There was
it's
a
just
local
ridiculous.
bar-
And we never had an issue. You never saw a police car. But,
Correct.
So,
There was a local bar a couple years ago that I believe that was the problem with them was they had a seating area outside, and people for years have been going out there sitting there drinking, but apparently they didn't have like an outside permit or something.
Oh,
So
wow.
cops were, and there was a lot of clubs that frequented, so cops were starting to hem them up. And eventually, I think they said you couldn't drink out, and then I think it's been switched around where now they must have gotten the proper permits or something, and now they have a seating area out there. But it's like enclosed, and if you go outside that door, then now you're in trouble.
So there's the lesson there is wherever you're at, find out what the local R's are. And you
Yeah.
touched on this briefly too, is don't do this 3 days before. My experience has always been nothing moves fast when you deal with government. So, if you're thinking on having an event, and even if you're plotting it 30 days out, if you're planning on having an event 30 days out, start researching this immediately, because the gears move slow, and it might be 2-3 months before you get a permit to shoot. And if you're trying to have an event in 30 days, it's not going to happen. So yeah.
there was an
so
event we
don't worry
just
about
sponsored that had the police kind of leaned on the bar beforehand, but they said we're doing it anyway. And it was the no alcohol outside. And of course, a few people walked outside with their cups, and nothing happened. But about a week later, they got cited.
The bar? Or,
Yeah, the bar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so the bars now said we can't do any more events here.
And they specifically were like citing it because of that.
The
that-
alcohol being outside.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so they can, you have an event now, and then a week, 2 weeks later, they can come back and
Yeah,
do
and
that.
that's the first time I've seen it. And,
Okay.
we sponsored 420 events last year.
Wow.
Wow.
That's the first time I've
Yeah.
seen that in all these years. So,
Huh.
it's always a move and a move and a move and a move.
Right,
I
you
think
gotta
the
put
best thing is don't publish it, and go to a licensed place and follow the bar's rules.
Yeah, that's what's getting harder there. At least here, I remember our first ride of the year a couple years ago. We've been doing it at the same place all the time. I forget what it was called. Then they changed over to one of the more corporate bars, which obviously have a complete policy, no colors.
Yeah.
And so I talked to them. They're like, "Well, we might be able to," and we're like, "Well, we need a backup because we can't go off of we might be able to." I went around one day, and I think I visited like 15 different bars, and every one of them, no, sorry, no cuts, no colors. Sorry, we can't.
I mean, mobile bars are an option. Also, these mobile vendors.
Like
there's
a food trucker type thing. or
Yeah,
something?
Yeah,
there's,
okay.
there's a few of them in town. There's a club member that's starting one right now, and there was a party down in Pahrump where they had a mobile. It's great.
Okay.
They take care of the issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can work a deal out with them.
Yeah. Huh.
And there's other ways that, if you're having an event, there's other ways if you're doing this for a fundraising opportunity, there's other ways to back end money out of these things. So if you can have somebody handle the alcohol, you kind of mentioned this, have somebody else that's legally licensed to deal with the alcohol or
Yeah.
the food or whatever, let them deal with it. And then you can make money on raffle tickets and
Or
other
maybe
things
they
like
make
that.
a contribution
or
to the event.
have an open,
you know?
right, right.
I mean,
so,
if that business wants to, they can.
yeah, a great big tip jar. Cool. Is there anything else you wanted
What
to?
else? No, I think just about how do people contact you?
Yeah.
That's probably important, right?
My cell phone is everywhere.
So legal rights. So tell us about how. Now you're just representative in Southern Nevada, correct?
We have setups in other places.
Oh, okay.
I'm in Southern Nevada, so Legal Right is part of our law firm, which is a bunch of names. Scheutze, McGahey, Turner, Ferris. But Legal Ride's the easiest thing to remember.
How do they get a hold of you? Legalride.com, or is that?
That's the website, but
Okay.
my cell phone is 702-324-5034.
Oh no.
And you're cool publishing that? Okay.
I don't care. I
Okay,
don't
good.
care.
All right.
Getting called all the time.
I
guess that's
get
good.
called all the time. Anyway.
All right, cool.
And you know, if you go to Facebook and look Legal Ride or VER, I mean, the phone number is everywhere on that
Sure.
stuff. So
VER, we mentioned this a couple times in the video,
Yeah.
is a Vegas Elite Riders. It's a group of riders that you get together that you help work with.
it's
that.
also now a gang.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
lovely?
do you
Okay.
mind sharing just how that
Yeah.
started and what it is?
'Cause you
Real
get
Oh,
quick?
what
events.
VER is?
Yeah,
Yeah,
very.
for those who don't know, you get events where you get like 200-300 motorcycles show up every week. It's pretty crazy, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a friend and I had been admins on various writing pages, and there's always disagreements and hard feelings at some point. So we just started our own page, and I thought it's going to be like all the other pages. There'll be 1,000 or 2,000 people on there, but something happened, and it's grown. Now we have about 12,000 local riders now.
Yeah, it's a great, really great group of people, and mostly sport bike riders, I'm going to be honest. But
There's
you
a,
gotta get
there's a
little bit
lot of
everything.
sport bikes,
Yeah.
stunners. You know, the dual sports are coming out. The Harleys are coming out. A lot of the Harley stunters are riding with us
Really?
now.
Oh, nice, okay.
And but yeah, it's a good mix.
Great group of people. I can't speak more highly enough.
And
Yeah, they're
and
just
we've
wonderful.
we've stayed out of trouble for the most part.
Yeah.
We've never, we've never had a fatality or a serious injury on one of our rides, which not many riding groups can say that.
Yeah.
And like we were saying, you get like 200 bikes sometimes.
Or
riding-
more. I mean,
or
we've
more,
had
yeah.
we've had over 400 on our
Really?
biggest ride was over
Wow.
4, and we didn't have an accident that day.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah. So we started this riding group, and it's been a lot of fun. We ride every single week, and we've had our run-ins with the police, and now we've been categorized as a gang.
No, of course.
But whatever.
That is what it is.
I guess technically it fits the definition.
Yeah,
So.
it's a group of people, I
It's a group
guess.
of
Is
people,
that what
yeah.
the actual
With the logo,
dictionary-
and you know, and
Yeah.
it continues when people leave or join or
Yeah.
leave. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it is what it is. Well, listen, thanks, Damon. I really appreciate everything you spending the time with us to do this for our channel. Please, thanks again for watching this. I hope this is informative to everybody. Please do us a giant favor and like and subscribe this video so that we can start to grow this channel and do more videos like this and interview interesting people like Damon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
Yeah,
a lot, guys.
thanks.
We'll see you in the next video.